I think that we got to start off with the Sunday Night Football game because holy cow, what a thriller it was. There were a lot. I feel like there were a lot of really good games that I'm really excited to break down here on today's show. But let's start off with Lions-Texans. Maybe not the full Titanic matchup that we thought that it was going to be just because there was injuries on both sides of the football. These teams aren't as healthy as they could be or certainly were at the beginning of the year. So injuries just sort of told the story a little bit. But in the end, the Detroit Lions got the thrilling last-second walk-off field goal victory, 26-23 in Houston. Let's take a look at the top 5 graded players for the Dallas Cowboys in this game before we break it down. Center Frank Ragnow was the top man on the list with a 93.0 PFF grade. Cornerback Carlton Davis showing that investment trading for him was worth it with a 91.3 overall grade. Guard Kevin Zeitler, the veteran, really stepping up, a 91.2 grade. Brian Branch continues to play unbelievable this season with an 83.8. And then offensive tackle Penei Sewell, who the boss around these parts, Chris Collinsworth, on the broadcast was just singing Sewell's praises, and he should be one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, and that was on display last night. Jared Goff, whoo! You must be this tall to ride the Sunday Night Football Jared Goff roller coaster, because holy cow, was that an up and down game from Jared Goff. But it ends up spitting out the 55.4 overall grade. On the other side of things, Houston, their top guy was Derek Stingley Jr., their cornerback, 86.0 grade. Tight end Dalton Schultz with an 86.0 as well. Rookie safety Kalen Bullock with an 81.9. Wide receiver John Mechie getting his first touchdown. You love to see it with him battling back, getting out of the field. Just a really feel-good story there last night. 81.0. overall grade, and then edge rusher Danielle Hunter with an 80.9 overall grade. CJ Stroud in this one also struggled, particularly in the second half, which I have a feeling we're going to talk about quite a bit. Hit a 56.3 overall grade. Dalton, I will start with you. And as we do for every single game, what is your stat that told the story of this one?
So the anatomy of any comeback actually starts on defense, right? You have to get stops first before you can start scoring enough points to come back. And the Lions, I should say, came out immediately in the second half and started doing it and did it all the way through. Okay, the Texans in the second half had 82 total yards in the second half of this game. 4 punts, 2 interceptions from Stroud, a missed field goal late in the fourth quarter that would have given them the lead late in the last 2 minutes, and then the Lions go down and kick the game winner with Jake Bates. This just completely fell apart on the Texans in the second half. From the very first play, Stroud throws one of the interceptions to Carlton Davis, like you mentioned, and they did not score a single point in the second half. I just think this is what you get. The Lions came out and they swiped the momentum from the Texans. They had all the momentum, right? It was 23-7, 20-7, and it just completely went away. All the issues we've seen with the Texans the last few weeks, the lack of receivers with Nico Collins still out and Stephon Diggs out for the year.
Yep.
The offensive line issues inside. Look, it was a bad matchup for them against the Lions in this game with Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader on the inside. They didn't run the ball as well with Joe Mixon in this game as they have in past weeks. Just all of the Texans' issues, they just waited a half to come out in this game. And it just, we're seeing consistently now that they can't overcome these things. We will see if Nico Collins is back next week and that really fixes the offense. But I think right now, to me, even when they're succeeding, it's very horizontal. I think they're losing. There was a couple of nice throws Stroud made down the field, but they're losing the vertical element of this offense, and now it's starting to cave in on them a little bit. They need Collins back healthy in the worst way, and they still need, to me, this pass protection to get a little bit better. But you can see even someone as good as C.J. Stroud, without all those supporting pieces, it's a struggle right now, and a 39.9 passing grade in the second half of this game is not going to get it done.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's not necessarily my stat that told the story, but it was my most disappointing with the Texans' second half offense. Texans in the second half over the last, 4 weeks, 3 against the Packers, 6 against the Colts, 6 against the Jets, and 0 against the Lions. 15 total points in the second half over the last month. Will Kunkel had that on Twitter. It's just got to be so much better than that, right? I mean, when we talk about points off of turnovers alone, there were so many turnovers by the Detroit Lions in this game. Jared Goff throws 5 interceptions. In the first half, they had 10 points off turnovers, 0 points off turnovers in the second half. And it's not like those turnovers went away. They were still there. The Texans just cannot get things going in the second half. And so that is very, very worrisome, especially because it wasn't just this game. It wasn't just Thursday Night Football. It has been a trend now. The Texans, certainly with some star wide receivers out, and I think that definitely goes into that lack of consistency on the offensive side of the ball. Really, unless Joe Mixon absolutely takes over for them, as we have seen him do over the last month, it's tough to really find that continuity with the rest of the offense to be able to keep moving the ball, especially in the second half, because when you get into halftime, best defense coordinators in the NFL, like, they'll be able to adjust, man, and you got to stay one step ahead of them. And it feels like Bobby Slowick this season is not able to stay one step ahead of those defensive coordinators. And it's not something that he's incapable of doing. We saw a great season from them in this offense last year. But to me, they were definitely most disappointing here, because now this is a trend with the Houston Texans and something that we have to monitor of. Okay, they start out of the gate really hot. They were up 23-7 in this game. And they ended up losing the football game because they scored 0 points in the second half. That just cannot happen, even with some of the injuries that they're dealing with and all that. You're not going to get to where you want to go as a franchise. My stat that told the story, the Detroit Lions turnovers. And sometimes we do these stats that told the story, and obviously we will list a stat for a team that won the game, right? Like, oh, okay, this is a big reason why they won. This was a stat that told the story on both sides of things, because I'm going to say that Detroit's turnovers, meaning the 2 interceptions that Carlton Davis got in particular, are a big reason why they were able to make this comeback in this game. I mean, him jumping that quick little out route to start the second half, I mean, just absolutely beautiful. I watched Carlton Davis for a long time, the entirety of his Buccaneers career, being a Buccaneers fan myself, and I don't think I've ever seen him play that confident. I mean, he was so confident last night, and he had a great run when they were going to the Super Bowl and everything, and Carlton Davis was good in Tampa Bay, but holy cow, last night's Carlton Davis was a different story. That's the player that you trade for that can make it all worth it. The first interception was beautiful there, and then him coming across the field on that deep interception that was going to Tank Dell, that's another incredible play by him, and you can tell by how confidently he went up to high point the football in the air, how confident he was making that play. So that is a story, Detroit's turnovers on the defensive side of the ball, of why they were able to come back. And I think on the other side of things, the turnovers, the 5 turnovers that Jared Goff had in this game, the 5 interceptions, that is also a story, because, Dalton, this game shouldn't have been that close, especially for how bad the Texans struggled in the second half. Detroit should have handled this game, and they didn't because of the turnovers. To me, the stat that told the story of the game was, okay, reason why the Lions were able to come back is their turnovers that they forced on defense. But the reason why it was close and they needed to come back in the first place was of all those turnovers they had on offense.
Yeah, and these things happen. And look, I don't think there'd be anyone that debates that the Lions are, one, more talented than the Texans, and two, it's kind of a bad matchup for the Texans as well. As good as the Lions are on the interior on both sides of the ball, it's just these things can happen. You go on the road, you're playing a good team, a team that's really trying to get their momentum back of their season through all their injuries, and these things can happen. But I think there's a lot to be said for the great teams. We see it from all the best teams. Is winning when you're not throwing your best punch, right? And okay, they're not going to beat everyone 49-7 every single week, right? And on the other side, Jared Goff is not going to throw 5 interceptions every week. Everyone's going to freak out about Jared Goff this week. And look, he just played 5 or 6 great games in a row. I don't think there's really a lot to worry about. A couple of the interceptions even were kind of fluky. So I think, look, they just got to get back into rhythm. They went on the road. They beat another division-leading team. I think if you're Goff, you look at what you did wrong. You look at a couple of things kind of unlucky. Yes, there were 4 turnover-worthy plays among them, but I think at a certain point you just sit there and you go, well, they won another ball game, and style points, at least in the regular season, for sure, they don't matter, right? And you just keep winning one at a time, and the Lions are 8-1. They beat another really good team.
Lukey asked in the chat what Aleem McNeil's grade was because he was not on that top 5 for the Detroit Lions. He has 72.6 overall grade in this one and a 72.7 run defense grade in this game. My most impressive is Carlton Davis. It's hard for me to go outside of that. Brian Branch had a great day as well, as we saw in the top 5, just like Carlton Davis did. But again, I go back to those 2 interceptions were a very big deal, but I think it's just the confidence in which he was playing that was the most impressive to me. It is really difficult to play outside corner in the NFL. It is by nature an up and down position. You mentioned sometimes you're not going to have your best day, and you've got to be able to figure it out. But on those days that you are your best, are you an impactful player? And certainly Carlton Davis was on Sunday Night Football. So to me, he had to be the most impressive. There are a lot of guys to choose from, but he had the most impressive performance of anybody out there. What about you?
I'll take Frank Ragnow, the constant on the inside at center. I mean, you talk about there's a very short list of guys who could be considered the best center in football, and Ragnow is on that list at the very least and could be number 1. I mean, you've got a 93 overall grade in this game, 91.5 run blocking grade, 0 pressures on 34 snaps, pass blocking snaps in this game. I mean, just a dominant effort from from arguably the best center in football. And I think we still probably consider this offensive line the best offensive line in football. And even through Goff's interceptions and maybe some struggles early on defense in the first half, this offensive line is a constant. And whether it be through the run or the pass, they can get them back in this game. When you have that up front, and really, I would say maybe only one or two other teams in the league have it right now. When you have that type of offensive line, 1 through 5 up front, you're never out of a game. You're never too far ahead in a game. They can keep pouring it on. It is what makes this team great, is this offensive line before anything else. And Frank Ragnow is right in the middle of it.
I'm glad I looked this up because I thought that would have been the best coverage grade of Carlton Davis's career, single game coverage grade, 90.7. He actually tied a game where he played the New Orleans Saints in 2019, so it was tied. That 90.7 coverage grade was tied for a single game high for Carlton Davis. Most disappointing. My most disappointing was the Texans in the second half, but what's yours before we move on?
The other side of Ragnow and that O-line, without Will Anderson, this Texans defensive line really had no answers. Danielle Hunter had 3 pressures, but as a unit, only 10 and a 44.7 run defense grade. In the trenches, the Texans still lack depth. If they don't have Hunter and Anderson on the field and dominating, it can get to be a problem against teams like this.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.